what I wanted to do is to give an impression of what a near-death experience is. No one can really give you a very good definition of what a near-death experience is or
Mm-hmm.
what it does. So what I wanted to do is to give a lot of quotes from NDEers
Okay.
and organize them according to 12 chapters that are topics that are important. And then uh, let the quotes talk for themselves.
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio-video podcast that features spiritually uplifting stories from spiritually awakening souls to help you on your own soul journey. On this episode, it's my extreme pleasure to welcome Robert Christophor Coppes. He has studied near-death experiences, NDEs, for decades and has lectured on this topic in the US and Europe. He considers his new book, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, his best book on NDEs because of the wealth of quotes from experiencers. In his opinion, the best tutors in life. By sharing multiple quotes from NDEers, he can offer information as to what NDEs are. Wonderful. Bob, I'm going to call you Bob for the sake of the interview. Welcome to
Yes,
the
please.
show. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. All right, Bob. So let's get things kicked off. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask most people, and that is, do you come from any kind of spiritual background at all in your past? Like when you were a child, like were you raised super religious or Christian? Or please tell us a little bit about your background first.
I was raised Roman Catholic. My mother, especially my mother, was very into that religion.
Hmm?
So I got a good education, so to speak, for in Roman Catholicism. But there were a few things that I didn't really like. One of them was Helen Purgatory, because I thought that is, how can that be? When you have a loving God, how can he or she allow that people go to hell or even to purgatory? So that stuck with me. And when I read Raymond Moody's book, that was in 78, he wrote it in 75, I believe. I read this book and I was struck that this was really something important for me, because somewhere in the book I read a story about a woman who had a life review in her near-death experience. And in that life review, she noticed that there was no judgment.
Mm.
And then I thought that she is right. There is no judgment, because why would there need to be a need to have a judgment? Because if you are in the light of the loving light, and you see everything, you understand everything, you also understand where you went wrong, and you don't have to be judged by someone else. You can do it yourself. And that is typically what people say.
Mhm.
You're not judged. There's no judgment. So that goes contrary to Roman Catholic belief. So there's no judgment, but there is only that if there is someone judging you, then it's yourself.
Mhm.
But even that is not necessary. You don't need to judge yourself.
Mhm.
And that is where it started for me. That was the aha moment for me, that I really thought, this is something real. This is the real thing that I have to look into. But I was doing my study economics, and I had a career. I needed to have something, earn money, of course. And then after a number of decades, I went back again to looking at near-death experiences, and I discovered that there has been a lot of research in the United States
Mhm.
through an organization called the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And in my own country, there had been done wonderful research by a group of people, and that had been published in The Lancet. And The Lancet is a very...
Hi, this is Dale Cross of Soul Inspire TV, And I want to invite you to my free webinar, Activate Your 5D Heart in the 3D. Are you ready to discover how to bring heaven down to earth and live in a bliss-filled reality of joy in the midst of collective chaos? Learn how to effectively shift from a 3D mind-based reality of struggling, striving, battle between light and dark. Learn how to shift from that to a 5D heart-based reality of effortlessness, joy, and unconditional love. This webinar will literally transform your life because I'm going to help you to learn how to live in alignment with your true nature of joy. And that's what's going to get you through all the chaos. So go ahead, click on the link in the description below this video, head on over to dalecross.net and click on the free webinar, Activate Your 5D Heart in the 3D. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Peace and blessings to you.
Important medical journal. So it was really serious research. So this topic was researched in a serious way. And that is something that I like as a researcher. And that's where it started for me.
Okay, very good. And so you tell us a little bit. So you wrote a book. Now you haven't had a near-death experience yourself per se, but you have interviewed or you have come into contact with many near-death experiences, and you've put together a beautiful book with quotes, correct, from these experiences. Can you just highlight some of the ones that have stood out the most for you, like some of the near-death experiences that you feel stood out the most? Because I know they're all wonderful, but is there any
Yeah,
ones that stood out the most?
that's a really difficult question. The book,
Okay.
by the way, is yeah, you're there for the difficult questions, of course. The book is called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. Because what I wanted to do is to give an impression of what a near-death experience is. No one can really give you a very good definition of what a near-death experience is or what
Mhm.
it does. So what I wanted to do is to give a lot of quotes from NDEers
Okay.
and organize them according to 12 chapters that are topics that are important, and then uh, let the quotes talk for themselves. And
Okay.
so the chapters are like, how do you get out of your body, of course, and how do you get into your body? There's a very funny quote there from a woman that had difficulties getting into her body.
Oh.
But there are also quotes about after effects, of course, the light, why we are on Earth, we are all important, life reviews.
Mhm.
Unity is very important, I think. And also, what I think is very important as well is veridical observations. And that's a difficult term. It says actually that it's verifiable out of body experiences. And these give circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real, that
Mm.
there is something about them. Because I'm a researcher, I'm an economist. I like to have things concrete. I want to know if it's true. I don't believe anything just by people saying something. Like
Mm.
it's what you can find on internet. All these stories could be just fake, and I wanted
Yes.
to know if it's true. Now, veridical observations give you circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. You will. It's. I think it's difficult to find or to be able to have research that really proves that there is an afterlife.
Hmm.
But what you can find is theoretical observations. And will give you an example
Sure.
of my own. Well, there are two kinds of theoretical observations, I would say. It is if people have their NDE, the first moment they get out of their body, they roam around where they were. So that's where they had their accident or where they were in the hospital, and they can see what happens there. There are numerous accounts of people exactly telling what the doctors said during the operation, and
Mm.
that had been confirmed later on. It needs to be confirmed later on to be a veridical observation,
Hmm.
and it needs to be confirmed independently. So not by the person himself, but also by the doctors or nurses present. Now that is all what you see on Earth. There, another category is veridical observations where things are being told during their stay in this wonderful otherly world, the not earthly world, and that people hear certain things that prove to be correct later on. And that gives a kind of verifiable thing as well. And I'll tell you one of those latter ones, and that's from my own experience. I had an interview with a woman, and that was in 2008, and that was just before the financial crisis. And she told me that she had her NDE in 1986. So that's like 22 years before. In her NDE, she was shown there was going to be a very um, big scare in the financial world, and it's going to be affecting a lot of countries, a lot of people around the world. But she didn't understand it.
Mm.
There was no timestamp there. There's no one telling her that it will be 2008 or
Hmm.
so.
Hmm.
But once we had this interview, there was the Bear Stearns had been in big problems. That's an investment company in the US.
Right.
And but that company had been rescued by the Federal Reserve in the United States. And as an economist, I thought, okay, everything is fine. And with me, everyone thought everything was fine because the stock markets went through the roof again. But
Yes.
she, during her interview, she said to me, "No, it's not going to happen now. This is what I feel because what I feel in the world now." With the whole episode around Bear Stearns, that is what I felt. The tension is what I felt during my NDE. That this is the time and it's going to happen soon. And I said to her, no, that's not true. It's okay now. Everything is fine. Everything has been rescued by the Federal Reserve.
Hmm.
Well, you know what happened later on that year? AIG went bankrupt. That's the biggest insurance company in the US.
Yes.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and then finally Lehman Brothers triggered the whole thing to fall down.
Yes.
And then I phoned her again. I said, "So this is what you were talking about?" And she said, "Yes, I told you, but you didn't believe me." And this is something that she heard on the other side, and it was proven to be correct. Um, so this is a kind of a veridical observation with information from the other side.
Hmm.
And I would love to see more research being done on that because there is like the other kind of veridical observations. There's, Irons published my book, but Irons also published this book, The Self Does Not Die.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful book because it contains hundreds of cases of veridical observations. The first category, the ones that happen on Earth, like doctors confirming what the patient saw, people confirming what they saw around the crash site, and
Hmm.
things like that. So this is there's so many of these stories that we cannot just say it's not true.
Right. We can't just dismiss them because there
We
is some.
can't dismiss them anymore. No, it's
Right. I heard, so would it count as a vertical? I did read in a book or saw somewhere the story of a blind NDE. You've probably come across the same one with the shoe on top of the roof or something. Are you?
that was not a blind
Oh, that wasn't
person.
the blind person.
No,
Okay.
no. Well, no, but that's a good vertical observation too. It's
Uh,
like
what was
um,
that one again? Refresh my memory.
yeah. There was a person, a woman, who was brought into the hospital and unconscious, and she had her NDE while she was in the hospital. And during her NDE, she left through the roof. And then she saw in the ledge of the hospital, she saw this particular tennis shoe with wear spots over the toe and the brand name, and I think it was the left shoe or something like that. I don't know. But she saw a lot of details. And then when she came back again in her body, she asked one of the nurses, it was a social worker, she told the story and she said, I would so much like to know if there actually is a shoe, because that would really show that I was out of my body and I was in that ledge.
Yes.
And then she went, the social worker went looking for the shoe. I know the social worker. She is called Kimberly Sharp Clark,
Okay.
and she lives in Oregon.
Mm.
And she went looking for the shoe. She had to go in the attics and look out of the windows and go to the next window and look out on both sides. And she found the shoe.
Mm.
And it shows you that this is an example. But the other thing you said about blind people,
Yeah.
there are blind people, those stories are there too. Blind people who were blind since birth.
Right.
They were, when they had their NDE, there are two stories there. One, that this person recognized the ring on the hand of someone else as being the ring that was the wedding ring, and he had never seen it. And the other person went out of the hospital in the NDE. You can separate from your body, so the body is in the hospital and your spirit goes out. And it had been snowing that evening, and he said, "I saw the snow. I saw that it had been plowed by these big trucks that take out the snow from the road." And I could feel the snow even, and that had been correct. That evening had been snowing and it had been plowed away on the streets. So these people that had been blind since birth couldn't have been able to tell these kind of things.
Yeah, so this provides some very good evidence that there is something beyond.
Yes, yes.
What's are you familiar with Sam Parnia?
Yes,
He did
yes.
the studies. Now he studied I don't know, can you refresh my mind about that? You're probably much more familiar with that than I
He did
am.
the AWARE study. That's it's a study. The AWARE studies, it's an acronym for a number of words. I can't remember that on the top of my head, but it's a study that goes into vertical observations. The point is that most NDEers that are in hospital and have their NDE, they say they float out of their body, they hover just beneath the ceiling of the room they are in, and then they continue. But whilst being there, they can look down and see what is happening with their body and what the nurses and doctors do. Now, the idea of this study was to place hidden signals on at a high level in that operating room. So, like for instance, on cupboards or so, and then have hoping that the NDEer would float past one of those hidden signals and
Oh.
then notice that. And then when they come back again, say, well, I've seen this and that. The point is that these hidden signals were on displays of computers and things like that.
Mm.
But I think the flaw in this study, it didn't deliver anything. I think they had a few vertical observations that had nothing to do with those hidden signals. So if you're looking for one thing and you find something else,
Mm.
then that's not, you cannot count that in. You understand? Because your procedure, your protocol is that you want to find someone who sees the hidden signals. If they see other things, and that is not valid. And that's how
Right.
science works. Now, in this case, if you would be floating out of your body, maybe you understand that because you have been talking about this and you understand these things. But a common person who had never heard about this, and you float out of your body and you're shocked beyond belief because you see your own body. At first, you don't realize that it's your own body, which is typically the case. People
Okay.
don't recognize their own body. There are so many funny stories there.
Right.
And then what do you do? Are you going to look for hidden signals? No, you're flabbergasted. You're out of your mind, you think you are.
Right. Right.
You're not going to look for hidden signals.
No.
So that's why it not really worked. And that's, yeah.
Right. Right. So the
But
a lot.
you
Yeah.
asked, actually,
Mhm.
you asked for a few cases that I liked very much.
Yeah,
So
like
and
highlights.
I think I started with this case of how to come back into your body, and I find that very funny.
Hmm.
By the way, that's also the same person with the shoe, Kimberly Clark Sharp.
Okay.
She had her NDE as well, and she was lying in the middle of the street. I think she had a heart attack or something, and no, she was not breathing. That's the breathing part was important. And then there were a lot of bystanders. No one knew what to do. It was a long time ago, so resuscitation was not really as common as it is now. So, and then one person knew something about that and went over to her, had to push everyone aside and then look down on her and then think, oh, now I have to do something. And she, at the same time, was told that she had to go back again. And the funny thing is that she says, if I park the car, parallel parking, I'm always a number of feet from the curb. So she doesn't really park very well. And she said, when I had to go back into my body or park my spirit in the body, I missed it also by a few feet. So I wasn't really in it. I was sort of, I don't know how to picture that myself, but she says, I
Hmm.
was not in my body all the way. I needed a little bit of help. And that's what this guy was going to do, because at one point he was going to breathe her. So he put his lips on hers. And then at that moment, she was able to re-enter her body fully.
Hmm.
But at that moment, she felt everything that went on in his life with what was he thinking. She also thought of the thoughts that he had was like, oh, now I have to put my lips on this perfect stranger. I don't know this woman, and I still have to do this very intimate act in order to breathe her. And
Hmm.
she felt all that. She felt that he was thinking that, and
Right.
it made her come into her body. That was one of the funny stories. There are a lot of important other stories, like
Hmm.
I always want to say to people, there is this story about a little young girl, 8 years old. She was abducted by two men. It was a kind of an awful situation. They tried to drown her.
Mm.
And whilst she was underwater, she could look up through the water. She could see this guy, but she could see also the sun in the sky. And at the same time, she was hovering above the scene. And that's
Mm.
something typical. Some more people tell a dual perspective. They look from out of their body, but at the same time, they have a different point of view somewhere else, and they are neutral. She was in a kind of a scared fighting mode,
Mm.
while the other person, her other self, hovering above the scene, was neutral and saw that her dad was coming to her rescue. So she was eventually she was fine, but she had her NDE at that moment. And when she went away through the tunnel, she found this elderly guy at the end of the tunnel. And then she said, uh, it couldn't have been anyone else than God. And God told me I had to go back. But he
Mm.
said, life is easy. It's just, you have to do four
Oh,
things, and that's easy. It's a kind of ingredient for life.
okay.
And she said, these ingredients are the following: it's love, be loved, just be, and experience life.
I love it.
Just love and be loved. I mean, those things are difficult.
Mm.
Loving someone else, or loving not a person, but everyone and nature, those
Mm.
things are important. But
Mm.
be loved by others, sometimes it's also difficult to allow others to love you. And then the other two were like, just be and experience life. It's life that you experience, and everyone does that. Everyone, that's one of the things in my book. I had all these quotes, hundreds of quotes of NDEs, and one chapter is about uh, why are uh, why are we on Earth? And the funny thing is, there are so many different things that come out of it. Some people explicitly ask, why are we here?
Mm.
And some people get that as a bonus. They don't ask for it, but they get some to hear something. And it boils down to several things, but love is one of the most important things there is. And like this quote that I just gave from this 8-year-old girl is important. But the other thing is also that it is just experiencing life. It's like, on the other side, everything is just hunky-dory. There's nothing special. It's the excitement kicks in when you have limitations in
Right.
time and place, like we have here in our 3D
Mm-hmm.
situation. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have the multiple um, uh, dimensions that are on the other side.
Mm.
So we have all these limitations. We have to take time to go from one place to the other. And we need to find food. We need to do this. We need to do that. And uh, our love, our divinity that's in us is obscured by so many stuff, like the
Mm.
whole earthly business. Your genes can be in your way. Your upbringing can be in your way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those are the two main factors that can, well, bring you away from your divinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that NDEs say. We are all divine. We have the divinity within us. Some people go even further. And that's, now I touch upon the chapter on unity. They say we are all one, or we are all God. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you really think about that, and go into extremes that we are one, then I'm also you, and you
Yes.
are me, and we are also the person that we despise in our lives. I mean, everyone has someone they don't really like. It could be a politician, but it could also be your neighbor or your boss or whatever. But
Right.
also that person, that's you. You have to really sit back and contemplate on that, because that is something.
That is. Wow. That is so amazing. So, of all of these NDEs that you feature in your book, and you've got some amazing quotes, uh, I guess I take it that they're largely the positive quotes, but did you come across anyone that had a negative NDE experience? Because it seems like the vast majority of people have a very loving
Yeah.
experience, and these more hellish type experiences are very rare. Did you find that?
Yes. Well, there are a lot of NDEs. There are hundreds, well, hundreds of thousands of NDEs. I mean, if you think of, there are estimations like 4 to 5% of the population have had them. Now, count
Mm.
that for the United States. That's really is millions.
Mhm.
Of those millions, it's difficult to determine how many are blissful and how many are distressful, and there is, in the distressful area, there are, well, three kinds of categories. Those vary from, well, being anxious for going through the tunnel or so, or parts that other people don't find disturbing. Some people do find that disturbing, some more anxiety, but there's also a category that is really hellish. It's really a minority. Like, if you want to put numbers on it, it would be something like 10 to maybe 15% of the people that, or NDEers, that have a distressing NDE.
Okay.
And of those, a minority have real hellish NDEs, although it's difficult to determine because no one really wants to talk about them. I mean,
Right.
you don't go around saying, "Well, I had a very
Yeah.
stressful NDE," because there is a lot of people that would say, "You earned that for one or other reason."
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I want to stress here.
Mhm.
One of the things that we really understand from NDEs, distressing NDEs, is that you cannot say that distressful NDEs are there only for bad people and blissful ones are for good people.
Mhm.
So if someone had a distressful NDE, you cannot say that person has been bad. I mean, also, how do you define bad? Well, anyway, you cannot say that. And I
Mhm.
say that because there are cases of people who have had a sort of bad life. I mean, I'll give you an example, but had a blissful NDE. And there are also cases of very common people who have had a distressful NDE. And so there must be another explanation for distressful NDEs. Let me first give you the example, the example of the bad person.
So-called.
Yeah, so-called bad person. It's Daniel Brinkley. He wrote a book himself together with Paul Perry. Maybe you've heard about that.
Yes.
He is a person, he says of himself that he was an awful person,
Mhm.
was in countless fights, stole people's bikes, was in, and went working for a secret agency, US agency,
Mhm.
that went abroad to kill um, people that were considered not very good for the United States. And one time he killed a lot of people.
Okay.
And he killed one person in particular by blowing up a whole hotel with 50 other bystanders in it.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
you wouldn't think that as a nice person. Now, in his life review, he saw everything he did, not only from his own perspective, but also
Mhm.
from the perspective of the victim, but also from the perspective of the wives of the victim and
Mm.
the children of the victim. So it went further. And for him, that was like hell.
I'll bet.
That was awful.
Mhm.
But he said, I was loved nonetheless. There was the light, and the light was absolutely loving. It didn't need to forgive me because there was no judgment from the light.
Mm. Mhm.
That's
Interesting.
one thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's and from life reviews, typically that's an interesting thing that so many people say is that you can feel what you do to others from their perspective, from the other person's perspective.
Mhm.
Now, an example of someone who had a common person who had an NDE, a distressful NDE, that's This one, I have my books there. It's a Misfit in Hell to Have an Expat from Kathy
Oh,
McDaniel.
I just interviewed her.
Well, there you go. She is,
There,
she is a wonderful person. She is
she is.
really loving, and she is. There's no reason why she would need to have uh, a distressing NDE. The only reason why she thinks that it could occur to her, and that I think that's the right explanation,
Hmm.
is that there are in her in her life, she had anxieties and fears
Mm.
that popped up
Mhm.
during her NDE. Like
Mhm.
she had been brought up, like me, Roman Catholic with Helen Purgatory,
Yeah.
and she was also very much afraid of being raped because she had that experience 2 times, I think. In her book, she says she talks about this.
Mhm.
And she also was afraid of attracting AIDS. And there were a lot of other aspects that she had a big fear for. Now, those things were the things that popped up in her NDE.
Right.
There are a lot of um, people that say similar things. So the explanation that is in theory out there is that things can pop up in your consciousness while being in your NDE that are from your own personal background, but could also be from the collective unconscious. You know,
Mhm.
the term by Carl Gustav Jung that everyone has. So, in principle, the conclusion could be that we all have the possibility to have distressing NDE. Now, having said that, I don't believe that there is a hell. And I say that because I believe this explanation. And I think that if people stay dead long enough, they
Mhm.
will be out of that horrible situation. Moreover, there are a number of NDEers who have heard explicitly that there is no hell and purgatory. There are a few of those in my book. I
Mhm.
explain distressing NDEs is one of the things that is one of the chapters in my book with quotes there, and
Okay.
so because of that, because of those other NDEs and the explanation that I just gave, I think there is only love on the other side eventually for everyone.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So it seems that the NDEs, as you said earlier, are in direct contradiction to a lot of the man-made religions that seem to be more based on fear. And do you think that's more so that they could control people? Because fear is a very good way of controlling people, is it not?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the point is that's one of the other books that I wrote is
Oh,
a book on the comparison between religions and NDEs. And
oh,
I took
great.
5 major religions like Hinduism, Buddhism,
Hmm.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and compared NDEs with them. And my finding was that if you really look at the essences of each of the religions, you will find those back in NDEs.
Hmm.
Um, but not the other way around. You have to think about that. It's not that all the essences from NDEs you will find in each of the religions. Now, I give you one example. Like NDErs often would say, there's a lot of NDErs that say we are all part of one, we are all part of God, we have the divinity within us. Yes?
Yes.
You won't find that in Christianity or Islam or Judaism because
Mhm.
in those religions God is outside you. It's the third person. He's coming to judge you. Uh,
Yes.
Hinduism, on as a contrary, they believe that everyone has God within. So you have the one God there is. That's the Brahma,
Brahma.
and you have the Atman. Everyone has Atman within, and that's the God within you, and it's part of the whole. So it's part of eventually Brahma.
Hmm.
So that it coincides more with what NDEers say.
Hmm. So,
And would you
yeah.
say your point is true? I mean, religions are, at least for a part, man-made. There are I can tell you so much about Christianity because that's something that is there in the West, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of Jesus being God is something that has been well, fabricated in the first few hundreds of years after, so in 325, Concilio of Nicaea, it started there, and then it went on. Um, and the whole idea of original sin, that has been fabricated too. They needed to find a reason why Christ had to be killed.
Right.
And the reason they found, because they said he's
Seems that
coming
way.
back very soon, and he never showed up. And then they had to find a reason. And then the reason was that there was original sin from Adam and Eve, and that it sticks to everyone. Well, that's something that's not real. That's not what you have, what you find in NDEs. People don't come back and say we are sinful. We have the original sin from Adam and Eve
Mm.
sticking to us. No, it's all love. There's only love. We are loved beyond our wildest dreams. Whatever you did, even this guy, Daniel Brinkley, who killed so many people,
Right.
everyone, also the person that you don't like, everyone has someone like that.
Isn't that the definition of unconditional love? The unconditional love being the acceptance of all things. And I guess, is there another common thread, would you say, in these NDEers where they feel that God is within everything, rocks, plants, trees, water. God is in the darkness as well, the light and the dark being one energy. But religion tells us to split darkness and light, creating darkness into sin, and light being the saint and the sinner. And it seems to me it's deeply traumatizing when we split off something that's one energy, and we're in this battle of light and dark when we're basically battling a part of ourselves. And isn't it better to integrate that? Would that not be one of the messages of these NDEs? They're more of integration of light and dark as opposed to fighting them. Like,
Yes, what you say is true. It's like what I understand from so many NDEers, and there are so many that don't talk about unity or about these things, but there are a lot of people that do talk about this. And the message is that we are all one. There's only one. So the darkness and the light are all one. It's the stones, the plants, the animal world, everything. It's not only human beings. It's
mhm.
everything. And if you sit down and you go think for a while and go into extremes with oneness, it, it brings you to very strange conclusions. But that I leave that up to the people to do
Sure,
that.
sure, absolutely.
But for me, it was kind of a revelation. If you really sit down and think that everything is one, also the people that you don't like, also the people you do like. I mean, we are all one. Think of what I try to think also is that the source, because I don't like the word God because it's religiously connotated.
Mhm.
So the source is reincarnated in everyone. So the source is in you, sitting in you, and looking out of your eyes and seeing the world from your perspective. But at the same time, the source is also within me. And we are not different. We are not separated. We are the same thing.
Mhm.
So if I do something harmful to you, I actually do it to myself.
Yes.
And that if you look at that from that point of view, and then you go to the conflicts that we have now on Earth,
Mhm.
in Sudan or in the Gaza and Israel
Yep.
or in Russia, Ukraine. what they do to the other side, they also do to themselves.
That's right.
And they do that to you. I mean, you are being harmed as well. I mean, maybe not you as who you are,
Hmm.
because you just play a role, just like me.
Hmm.
We all play a role. Yeah, that's how it is. And but the source is being harmed by the source itself. It's like it's very strange. You
It's
have
a,
to think that.
it's kind of a mind-boggling thing, right? It's beyond the mind, beyond the
Absolutely,
capacity.
absolutely.
But
That's
it,
why I also understand why it says in the Bible, don't make an image of God, because you cannot conceive what the reality is. So it's yeah.
mm-hmm. Would you say that all belief systems would then inherently have some form of distortion to them? Like all belief, even positive and negative belief systems must have some form of distortion due to the fact that they're based in the mind, they're based in time and space, and source is really outside of time and space, localized and non-localized.
Yeah, yeah, you that's absolutely true. I mean, consider it like this, that the source is in more dimensions. There's more dimensions than the three that we have plus
Right.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In Europe, we say we have four dimensions. I think you in America say three dimensions, but it's the same with time.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that in Europe.
So
Okay.
yeah, so uh, if there are more dimensions, 5 or 12 or 21, I don't know, but you cannot understand that when
No.
you're brought up in this life with only four dimensions.
Hmm.
You can never just imagine how that would be for a world where there are only two dimensions and time, so a flat world. Someone from there pops out into our world, sees you sitting there, sees me sitting there, and
Hmm.
then think, wow, there is something extra to them. It's height. We have volume. They don't have that there because they only have 2D. Now he goes back to his own world. How does he explain what this third dimension is? He cannot do that
No.
because there is no concept. And that's one of the things that NDEs say. We lack the concepts and the words to explain what is happening there. Like
Right.
one of the things that I always find very interesting is that they say there is no time on the other side. Well, how do we understand that? We are brought up with time. There's
Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
and they say all time is there at the same time. Or I could look through time and see 1,000 years in the history, 1,000 years in the future. Those are real quotes.
That's amazing. So like past, present, and future all in the one moment.
Yes, maybe the moment is not the right word, but they are
Right.
all there at the same time.
Yeah.
Your birth is still there. It's still happening. Think of that. You
Right.
cannot, it's mind blowing, those kind of things.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Neil Donald Walsh's book called Conversation with God?
Yes.
He talks
Yeah.
about that. He talks about how everything's happening at the same time and your birth and your death. I don't know,
Yeah.
something like this is all taking place, merging back with source, but you're already one with source. So it's like, yeah, yeah,
And then the thing of reincarnation is like if time is there all at the same time and everything is happening at the same time, and source is everything in everything. So source is in you, reincarnated in you and in me.
hmm,
There is no need for reincarnation because source does everything. Source is experiencing everything. So when you die, you will be able to understand what Napoleon did in throughout his life, but you can also understand what the woman who was selling fish on the market in New York somewhere in the 1800s had been going through. I
hmm,
mean, you can understand every life, and
right.
there's a nice story from one of it's also in my book. One
Hmm.
of the people that I have in my book is a guy who had a friend, and this friend had just passed away 3 days before. And then he was so sad and distressed, and he took a lot of pills and alcohol, and he passed away himself. So
Mm-hmm.
he had an NDE, and in his NDE, he encountered this friend who had passed away 3 days before, and then he thought, well, okay, if I see you and I can speak to you, then and you're dead, then I must be dead too. And that's where it started. He realized that he's dead, and then they talk about things, and this friend shows him some things about time. That time is fluid. It's not there, or it's all at the same time. And he shows that by showing the NDEer Michelangelo's work on the Sistine Chapel,
Mm.
because he knew that the NDE was so interested in Michelangelo. So he took him. Let's go to Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel,
Excuse
and
me.
he shows this, and the guy, the NDE, goes like, "How is that possible? I'm here, and I'm seeing what he's doing." And then for one brief moment, he becomes Michelangelo, and he said that was mind blowing. And then he had to
Wow.
go back again to Earth. So what I want to say with this story is that there is no separation between this guy or you and Michelangelo. He is just alive. A source led his life, and we can access that life as if we are this person. And that's also perhaps the reason why you will be able to understand exactly what you do to others as if you are those others. Like you do something to someone else, but you feel it from their perspective. You are that person. It's not like you're an onlooker. You are that person. That's what so many NDEers say in their life review. That makes them change their life for good, because they look at people from a different point of view. They think, okay, let me be nice to you because I will feel that later. Yeah.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I think that's further evidence that these NDEs are not hallucinations, but real experiences. The fact that it makes such a profound impact and then life change in the person. Like obviously Daniel Brinkley was completely, his whole personality was turned upside down. He's a different person. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, if this was just like a lot of scientists say, oh, it's just hallucination, and
Yeah.
the brain is still going a little bit for 3 minutes or whatever it is, and then they're creating, even without oxygen, whatever it is. But I'm like, okay, but if usually when people have hallucinations in mental hospitals, and if it's the drugs, they have a very disjointed negative,
Exactly.
but these are very, well, you just can't make this stuff up.
No,
It's very,
hallucinations are very chaotic. And
yes.
these stories have a storyline. They are logical. There's something going on. And moreover, don't forget that we have those veridical observations that show that things are correct, and they are confirmed independently. So
Hmm.
hallucinations, no, because it's not chaotic. It's really,
Hmm.
there's a storyline there, and
Yeah,
there's circumstantial evidence.
right. And then there's did you notice that a lot of the people you talked to for the book came back with some gifts that they didn't
Oh
have
yes,
previously? For example, clairaudience, clairvoyance,
yes,
clairsentience, things of this
yes.
nature where they can see, have premonitory dreams. Can you
Yeah,
share a
there
little
are
bit
a lot
about
of
that?
there's a lot of strange after effects, like what do you say, clairvoyance, mediumistic uh, um, abilities,
Mhm.
but also funny things like interfering with electricity. That's
Yes.
if they have a watch, it stops, or computers stop. Sometimes even lights um, turn off. Uh,
Hmm.
but also they change when they were more. materialistic before their NDE, they become it less afterwards. They are more interested in people, they become more social, more interested in nature. Um, they're not so interested in power anymore.
Right.
In money and power, those are not so important. It's more what I said before: love, be loved, just be and experience life. Those are things that they will understand, and they live up to that.
So that's a return to simplicity. Sorry, it's a return to simplicity, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's more, yeah, a simple life would be good enough. Yeah, that's how I understand it.
Because in this modern, I don't know what you call it, postmodern, modern world, people are very, I find people around me are very addicted to busyness, and they have to work, work, work. And, they're on their cell phone as soon as they get up to scrolling through the messages. And nobody talks on the phone anymore. God forbid, it's got to be a text message, because there's too much connection when you talk on the phone. I don't know.
But I do that too. I'm
I
very
mean, I'm not,
busy and I do.
there's no right or wrong,
I
of
didn't
course.
have an NDE, so I'm only a researcher. But
But yeah.
if you're interested in NDEs, you do change. I think I
Mhm.
changed after the NDE and
Mhm.
after researching NDEs. And what I really hope is that you don't need to have an NDE yourself to change. And I hope that when people really understand that vertical observations give circumstantial evidence, that they will become interested in the messages of NDEs, and the messages are love and oneness. Like what we spoke about before. If I do something to you, I actually do it to myself. I will feel it as if I undergo it myself. So people will maybe change their lives and be more considerate of others
Mhm.
and of nature, the animal world, the plants. We need trees. I mean, nature will continue even if we destruct everything. We need nature. It's not the other way around.
Mm. Nice way to cap things off, Bob. Bob, if are you open to people contacting you?
Yes,
What's
I
the
have a
best way?
website.
Okay.
Sorry.
What's the best way?
Well, I have a website, and it's www.bobcoppes, Bob, of course, and then Coppes, COPPES.com.
Mhm.
There's a form there that they can contact me, and I can give. They can ask anything. And my book is published by Ions, but
Mhm.
it's available on Amazon, and it's called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, because I think impressions is the only thing you can get if you read enough of these quotes.
Very good.
And I leave it up to the people themselves to come to their own conclusion.
I like that. That's very good, because we all have our own perceptions, don't we?
That's it.
And I guess we're only ready for what we only come into contact with what we're ready for too, right? Like
True, true. And
it's
the thing is, we are always helped. And that's what I believe, but that's what I also understand from NDEers. If you really want to have help and you're open to it, you will receive it. And people have to understand that they are loved beyond their wildest dreams. And I'm quoting so many NDEers that say that there's so much love from the other side for us.
beautiful. That's beautiful. So, okay, so we'll make sure we put your website underneath in the show notes. And you also, everybody, please feel free to purchase that book, because it's a beautiful book that he's written. Impressions of NDEers that you can purchase from Amazon, and there'll be a link in the show notes. Bob, if there's one last thing you could share with the world, what would it be? I know you already said a wonderful thing, so I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
For me, having looked at NDEs, it's you want to change. One of the things that I put into practice is I try to smile 3 times a day at people that I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
smiling at people that I know is easy, but
yes.
just people in the shops or on the street. And what I understand from one of the NDEs in my book is that it's so very important that you cannot understand sometimes what you can do with just a smile or being nice or saying something nice to someone. The small things do count.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
listeners, tomorrow, try this three
Okay.
times in a day. Do it. It's not easy. I know from experience.
That's right. So try at least 3 times to smile to a stranger, right? Which is kind of like a random act of kindness in a way, because you're showing
Yes,
some kindness through your smile.
without getting anything back.
Of course, no hidden agendas, right?
That's it.
Zero hidden agendas. Okay, very good. That's unconditional love when you don't expect anything in return. And then the irony is you do get a lot in return, of course.
You do.
The universe blesses you. It may not be in the
Yeah.
way you think, but you will get a blessing back but especially when you don't expect it, yeah. Bob Coppes, thank you so much for being on this edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. It's been a
It
treat.
was so nice to be with you. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much. All right. And thanks everyone for joining us on this edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. See you next time. The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness.